Why is tongue spelled that way?
What should our legs actually be called?
How did our naughty bits get their names?
Find out as we keep things anatomically correct in another full-bodied episode of Words Unravelled. Welcome to another Words Unravelled. I'm Rob Watts from the YouTube channel Rob Words.
And I'm Jess Ferris, author of the etymology books Once Upon a Word and Words from Hell. And today we are unlocking the beauty and the horrors of the human meat sack through the magical ways we discuss aspects of ourselves inside and out.
The human meat sack, Jess.
Indeed. I mean, it's accurate. It's also a bone bag, for what that's worth.
These remind me of the old English terms for body, which were things like bone locker, weren't they?
No, that's the thing, though, is like words for body parts and the things that come out of them are such a curious function of the English language because they are fundamental to our very existence, but they're dramatically misunderstood throughout medical history. And then the names are super eclectic. Like many body parts and fluids have retained very frank and physical Germanic names. Others have adopted names from the Greeks who research and practice medicine, and then subsequent Latin scientific names. And then some make perfectly logical sense. Some are wondrous and imaginative. Some are esoteric, and some are just gross. So let's start with the basics. Can you talk to us about the word body?
That seems like a very good place to start. And we should be proud of our bodies as English speakers, because body is a word that, as far as anyone knows, is unique to English. And that sounds like a bit of an odd concept, but there are words in English that other Germanic languages don't have what's called a cognate, a relative word for, and body is one of those. It's other words are like big and dog and bird. We've talked about these before. There was, we don't really know. If you go back, along the family tree of English, you don't find them past a certain point, and they're not in the relative languages. And body is one of those. All the other languages, like the Germanic languages, they use relatives, for example, of the Latin word corpus. Like here in Germany, the word for body is Körper, but they also have another word, which is Leib, which is related to our word life. And you also get those relatives in the other Germanic languages, but none of them have a word that sounds like body to refer to a body, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Oh, actually, my favorite one, though, is the Dutch word for body, or one of the Dutch words for body is lichaam, and that's spelled Lichaam. And the first four letters of that will remind you of something you've told me about in the past.
Lich, right? Which is body or dead body in English.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we tend to just use it for a dead body now. But yeah, the Dutch word for body is related to that word lich, meaning a corpse in English. And corpse is obviously related to the Latin word corpus I was just talking about. The other interesting thing about that is that the word lich is related to our word like. Not only that we like something, but also like that goes at the end of things to say it is like something else, because the idea, I think, being that it's shaped like something else, and body and shape being concepts that are sort of tied in with one another. And
then the ly ending is also related to these because it literally means like something.
Yeah, and in Dutch, it is like. That is their ly ending, but that also means in Dutch body.
Huh. That's so interesting. That is very interesting, in fact. What is the second half of the Dutch word?
So you have the lich bit, which is the body, but the harm bit means covering. So sort of the body frame. But you can, like I say, you can just have like in Dutch, which means the same thing. So you don't need the frame element there.
In modern English, body, like if you say my body, you're implying your living body. But if you say I found a body, it is understood to be dead, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it is, because it's very impersonal, right? Isn't it? To refer to, oh look, there's a body over there. I mean, you sometimes will refer to a living person. Oh, we need more. We need a few more bodies around here. Might mean you need more people around. But at the same time, there's a kind of weird, morbid tone to that, isn't there?
It's like it has the body has to be paired with one of those words that implies like breath. It needs to be infused with life, like spirit and things like that, and souls and whatnot.
Yeah, but it goes back to the Old English. I should have said this: body, which is BODIG, and yeah, before that, we don't really know where it came from.
And then we have our other more, I don't know, scientific word for the study of the body, right? We have anatomy, which is equally kind of creepy. I don't know. Even more creepy.
Tell me about it then. I mean, if there's a creepy element to it, I'm sure you'll have found it.
The Greek anatomia is, it means dissection. It is literally a cutting up. The root ana here means up or into pieces. And then the root word here means to cut, which is wild. And it's the same root as the word entomology, which is often confused with etymology.
Is that related to atom as well?
I believe so. That's a great question. I believe it is. It is, that's a small piece of something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're going to get into some anatomy then, aren't we? I reckon we could go pretty much head to foot, not toe. I haven't got toe. head to foot on the human body and where various bits and bobs come from. And what we're going to find is that these words are really, really old. The actual variance between languages on these words is really small because humans have had these body parts for blooming ages, and they've had names for them going back further than we have records of anything being, written down, for sure. So you'll find that a lot of the Indo-European languages have related words for these body parts, and that's going to be a theme that comes up a lot.
Absolutely. A lot of what I have is, since I wrote a book about gross and vulgar things, a lot of my bits that I'm going to discuss are more internal. And I believe you have brought more external features.
Yeah.
The prettier bits.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who they're on. But yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, so should we start on the outside and then work our way in then?
I like it.
And I think head would be a good one to start with. It's from the Old English llavod, which is related to Latinate words for head as well. When we think about captain, capital, chapter, all of these words, they're actually related to our word head, even though it seems really difficult to link those because they don't have any consonants in common, do they? Llavod, which is HEAFOD, and caput, which would be the root of the Latin word. And that's because of consonant shifts that are very regular, that go right back to Proto-Indo-European, this hypothetical language that was spoken by all of the Indo-European peoples and is the root language of all of those. And there's a regular movement in how consonants are pronounced in sort of the north of Europe and the south of Europe. That means you can often swap an H sound for a K, for example, or a K sound. It's why we have a word like head being related to a word like capital, or or cap. These will ultimately go back to head. But it's also why canine and hound are related. They have this K and H. Or, as we discussed in our numbers episode, why the word 100 is related to centum in Latin. And so head is a really, really old word that we can trace back as far as we can trace the English language, because we've always been wandering around with heads, certainly for as long as we've been talking.
Surely
it's
not.
Tricky to do it without.
Oh, I love it. And inside that head, we have our brain. The Old English word for brain was brain, and in Old English also there was a word for head that was brain loca, which literally means brain locker.
I like that one.
I love that one.
There's also Hirnpan as well, which is an Old English word for the brain. And that's more recognizable to speakers of other Germanic languages. Like in German, it's a Gehirn. And yeah, because actually brain is another sort of strange word when you put it alongside the other Germanic languages' words for the brain, isn't it?
It's thought to eventually be cognate with a Greek word meaning like the front part of the skull or the top of the head. But my favorite alternative is from Anatoly Lieberman, and it's that it's related to some Old French and Celtic words meaning refuse, rubbish, or rejected matter, because many cultures thought that animal brain matter was just like was essentially non-edible or less tasty at the very least, and not very good to eat. And then other etymologists have connected it to German words meaning rotten or like a pulpy mass, which I think is pretty interesting. Lieberman also cites a theory that the original root, the Proto-Indo-European root of brain, means something broken because your brain is wrinkly and wrinkles make it look cracked. Cracked.
It's broken or split, right? Because I mean, if you look at a brain, it does look like it's in two parts. It looks like it's split down the middle.
And then it's got all those wrinkles all around it. I mean, I think it kind of tracks on some days that your brain is something broken.
I'm since having a child, I've been experiencing that feeling more often than usual.
Oh, I believe it.
What do we know about the bits that are on our head and the face, for example? Again, these are all like really, really old words. Although what I find really interesting about face is the fact that it means something that is facing someone, right? It's not something is facing someone because it's like a face. It's that we call it a face because it is what is facing someone. It's the thing that someone sees. It's the same as the word facade, which just means a bit of a building that you can see. But also that tracks with other languages' words for face. Like people will know the French word visage, for example, which means basically thing you can look at. It's based around the verb for to look. And the same with German. It's called a Gesicht in German, which is a thing you look at. So these are three completely different words for the face, Gesicht, and visage across these languages. But they all have been established through the same thought process that, let's call it the thing that is looking at us.
It makes sense. I mean, when you talk about someone's appearance, generally speaking, you're like the first thing that comes to mind is their face, and it is the thing that we use to remember and connect people with emotion. It is how we identify one another.
But other parts of the face, they're all very old words as well. When I say old words, I mean we can trace them back beyond the start of the English language. Like the word "I," for example, is related to similar words in all kinds of other languages. I think it's "och" in Dutch, which isn't a million miles away. It's "Auge" in German, but even beyond the Germanic languages, the words for "I," we have "ocular," for example, which isn't a million miles away from that Dutch word "och," or indeed from our word "I." And nose is also really old. Oh, here's my favorite nose fact. Sorry, I'll let you get a word in edgeways in a second. But you know what nostril literally means?
No, I don't. Tell me.
It was originally nos thurl or nos thrill. And to thrill something is an old verb meaning to run through, to make a hole.
Oh, weird. I like that.
So
no, I don't like that.
It just means nose hole. But here's an interesting thing. Do you know what an eye hole was in Anglo-Saxon English?
I do. It was a window.
It was, yeah. Before we took the Danish word, which means wind eye, one of the words we had was an eye thrill or an eye thur, which meant an eye hole, the thing that you glance through, which I think is rather delightful. I think window is also quite delightful in itself. But yeah.
Eye has a lot of interesting relatives. Like the word synopsis is related to ultimately through like the Proto-Indo-European root. It means like seeing something together, essentially the way we use it now, like seeing the whole plot of something in one smaller summary.
Right. Yeah. So the sign at the start is a bit like synergy, and the opsis would be the looky bit.
And then similarly, the word ferocity is a combination of the word ferus, which is F-E-R-U-S, related to feral. The second part is looking, essentially, or seeing. So something ferocious is wild looking.
That's magnificent. Doesn't that make the word so much more vivid now? And you're going to know exactly when that is the right word to use now.
And then myopic, which, I mean, that one I think is a little more obvious, but it means like essentially having your eyes shut or your view is limited.
This is one of those roots that pops up all over the place, a bit like head does. I mean, there are many more that I forgot to mention that are related to the caput original Proto-Indo-European root, and not just the word head itself. The ear is a bit boring, by the way.
Does it just mean ear?
Yeah, it's just always meant ear. It comes from an ancient root meaning ear. It's related to the Latin auris. You trace both of those words, ear and auris, and you go back to the same word from, many, many millennia ago. And mouth is kind of an unusual one, actually, because mouth originally had the meaning of to a projection, which is kind of the opposite of what I think of it as being now. I think of it as being a hole, but originally it meant a projection like the chin,
like a snout. Oh, okay, that would make sense.
No, not like a snout. Although, I mean, well, who's to say why they made it? I think most etymologists think it was related to the projection of the chin, but who knows? Maybe
we are a relatively selfish species where we're probably talking about ourselves.
yeah, probably.
The word tongue is interesting. I mean, it's always meant tongue, essentially, but the spelling of it is curious because it's an overcorrection. It's an attempt to reflect its correct pronunciation. The original spelling was Tunge, and it seems to be the Tongue seems to be more of an attempt to get it to be pronounced tongue rather, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But apparently, it was. An attempt to make it pronounced less like tunga or something like that.
But what it also does do is it makes it look more like the French word for tongue, which langue, which ends with the G-U-E as well.
Very much a Middle English
so they're probably
thing.
trying to get it to be pronounced like the end of the French word.
The Normans trying to get it to be the English word to be pronounced like the French.
They're trying to shoehorn it in. Hey, it worked. So that's the face. Where do we go next?
There are a few interesting throaty words. The word throat in Old English is basically the same. It's spelled with the thorn, though. But in Old English, one little interesting fact, your Adam's apple was called the throatbolla, or the throat bowl, where the bowl refers to the round seed of a plant, like a cotton boll.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I like that. It's a religiously neutral term for your Adam's apple.
The esophagus is interesting because it means like to carry eating. It's composed of these Greek elements that mean to carry and to eat. Kind of the same idea for like words like gullet and whatnot, which are related to words like gulp.
And we came across that ending on esophagus when we were talking about sarcophagus.
Yes, that's right.
Which meant a corpse eater, or a macrophage or a microphage, or the phage bit. Phagus means
and that's because the idea was the material, what was it, like lime used to reduce the juiciness of a corpse? I don't know, either way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they found that when they put bodies in a coffin that was made of a stone that they called sarcophagus, so it wasn't actually the coffin itself that was called sarcophagus, then it disappeared, like as if by magic.
You know what else is kind of disturbing on a similar note? The word skin, the root of that word, it gives it the meaning of something that's peeled off, which is horrible.
Isn't it grim that like the verb to skin something comes before we're referring to what covers us as skin? I think we were calling it hide in Old English before.
So same idea.
yeah, exactly. Do you know what? Skin is actually one of those words that I dislike as it comes out of my mouth. Skin. There's nothing nice going on with the word skin.
Not a fan. Epidermis works great.
Epidermis is kind of funny,
isn't it?
Epidermis. I don't know why I did that. I said it like that.
But while we're on the subject of like I don't know, creepy, dried up, all these kinds of things. I think we mentioned before on our Halloween episode that skeleton means dried up, is from a Greek term skeleton soma, meaning a dried up body or mummy. So it was like the thing that's left after you've decayed.
Oh right, now I didn't know that one. If we did mention it before, I didn't pick up on it. That's fascinating.
Dem bones have always been dry.
While we're on bones, I don't want to move too far down the body too early, but our word for leg is not what it should be. We shouldn't be calling it a leg.
What?
So English is a West Germanic language. So it's related more closely to Dutch, German, and Frisian than it is to the Scandinavian Germanic languages. But the word leg is much more similar to the words used in Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, and Icelandic for the two pins at the bottom of your body than it is to the German words and the Dutch word and the Frisian word. Our word for leg should actually be bone.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. The word, for example, in German, Bein means both leg and it also means bone, which is kind of amazing. I don't know why they've been so sort of lazy and doubled up on that, but you look at all of historically, you look at the old Saxon, you look at all these old Frisian, these old West Germanic languages, and they're all using the same word for a bone as for a leg. And I don't know I don't know why that is. If it's just that it's a kind of long thing.
I mean, I guess the largest bone in your body is your femur, so I don't know. That makes reasonable logic.
Yeah.
A lot of people had bony legs, I'm sure.
But I guess that means we probably picked up the word from the Vikings.
Let's see, where should we go from here? We could address the heart.
Oh, yes. Yes, let's do that.
In Old English, the heart wasn't just the organ beating in your chest. It was your soul, your will, your courage, and your intellect, much like we use it metaphorically today. In some societies, the heart was considered the seat of many functions we now know to be more affiliated with the nervous system and the brain, which it makes sense that would, like, that misconception is pretty understandable, because when you feel a strong emotion, often it increases your heart rate or makes your chest feel tight for various reasons.
Heart is another one of those Proto-Indo-European root words that has sort of quite a surprising but actually calculable relationship with its Latin equivalent. So cardio and heart are related because, again, you've got that k and h relationship that we saw with head and capital and, as like I said, 100 and centum. But that means that the word heart is also related to not only words like cardiology, but also the word courage, which is literally to be hearty, full of heart, which is exactly how we use it figuratively. In fact, you can just say, I have heart, and that means I'm feeling courageous.
It's also related to words like credible, credence, and credulous, because credere meant to believe in the sense of like believing with all your heart, essentially.
This is fantastic, isn't it? You know, just talking about parts of the body gets us into so many of these types of words just because it is so universal. So such a universal part of being a human is having these body parts. And that's why we have so very many linked words. I love this.
What body part should we address next?
The lungs are right next door. So we could just mention that word is actually related to our word light, it's thought, as in not heavy, because it's thought to come from an early Germanic root word meaning not heavy. And why? Maybe because when you chuck a load of offal or you chuck a load of organs into a stew pot or whatever, the lungs are going to float to the top because they're full of air. So that's why they may well have named them something that is light. Yeah.
One interesting thing about the organs that kind of tracks with that is that words for internal organs and other parts of the body on the inside are often interchangeable. They appear in different languages as different parts of different words. Like in Latin and Greek, the predecessors to the word stomach have referred to like throats and esophagi and anything involved in the digestive tract, as well as emotions and like physical input connected to ingestion and flavor.
And you kind of get that transference with the word gut in English, right? It can both mean any of your internal organs, but it can also mean a very specific one.
Absolutely. In English, we borrowed the word gastros, which in Greek was a word for your like external gut or paunch, whereas in English, it is a word for internal gastric functions.
Oh, yeah. So that's actually a third use of the word gut as well, right? You know, if you've got a bit of a beer belly, you've got a gut, as well as you having blood and guts and you just having a gut.
And then in Old English, the word for stomach and later for throats and gullets and things was related to the word maw, which typically refers to like mouths now, right?
And stomach is one of those words that is just from French, I think. Yeah, it's not an Old English word because a lot of these words are Old English.
These were more that were introduced in like Middle English, and then as interest in Greek medical practices became widespread throughout Europe.
Yeah, it starts to get a bit more scientific, doesn't it, when we're talking about the inside bits. And that's why the words are perhaps a little bit younger or, newer to the English language, because you've actually got to get in there and really understand what's going on there. I did come across quite a fun Old English etymology, though, for an internal organ or a pair of them.
What's that?
Kidney. So the Old English for a single kidney was kidnere, which is thought to be a compound word. And no one knows exactly what it is a compound of, but the leading theory is a really satisfying one. And it is that the start of it is from the Old English quith, which meant body, which is fine. We'll go with that. We don't use that anymore, but that could have been we could have been talking about our quith and soul instead of our body and soul, but we're not. We're talking about body. So the start of kidnere means body, and then the error bit is thought to potentially be related to a or eiren, which is the Old English for eggs.
Huh.
So that makes your kidneys your body eggs.
Body eggs. That's fantastic.
It does rather give the impression that a man came up with this one. But the eggs that are inside your body.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I like that one. Body eggs.
Bowels, entrails, and intestines, on a delightful note, have all interesting journeys. Like, it's no secret that sausages are often made using these bits, but the word bowels took the opposite route. It entered English in the 1300s and is originally from the Latin botulus, meaning sausage, which is also related to botulism, which is known for appearing in preserved foods like sausage.
And it's related to the word Botox, right? Which is botulinum toxin. Yeah.
Another fun thing about the word bowels is that in humorous Greek poetry, they were associated with like extreme passions, including love and anger. But a Hebrew association between the bowels and gentler forms in love of love, including like kindness and pity and benevolence, were also introduced into 14th century English through translations of like biblical texts. So for a short time, bowel also meant tenderness and compassion, which you can find in Colossians.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The line in the King James Version is, "Put on, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercy, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering." So your bowels of mercy.
Roses are red, bowels are blue.
Are merciful. Oh boy. Anyway, entrails. That's another interesting one. This one emerged in Middle English. It sounds like it should have something to do with long trailing shapes of intestines. And indeed, in Old English, the word for intestines was basically rope. But instead, entrails literally means your insides. It's related to the word internal. And It just means interenius, which is cool. It doesn't have much to do with trails, but there could be some folk etymology influence there, though it also came from the Old French entraille.
And actually the word intestines means internal as well.
Exactly. Same thing.
I want to just stay on the internal organs a little longer because I'm worried about how low down the body we're getting, because I think Jess is about to enter into her element. But liver's gross. Liver is thought to be related to the Greek word for fat. So, like lipid as well, meaning like a fat cell. The link would be probably that it kind of looks sort of greasy.
Ew, I love it.
I don't like the word liver, which is interesting because that means it's not necessarily related to the word live, even though it looks very similar. And in other languages, like, again, I'm always thinking of German, aren't I? Because I'm here in German, but Leben is to live, and Leber is spelled almost exactly the same, just swap the R and an N, and that is liver.
Oh, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that in both of those, both our language and in German, those words are very similar, but it doesn't seem like they're related. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, colon. Colon is in the intestine, is not related to other types of colon, like a semicolon. Or
it isn't?
No, it's not. It's not related.
I mean, that
they're
kind of
two.
makes sense.
They're two very similar Greek words that have basically just sort of ended up converging by the time we've had them here in English. But the Greek word that becomes the semicolon or colon, and indeed our word column, means a limb or something like that. A part, or Christopher Columbus, his name means a column as well. Whereas the colon, your insides, is a different Greek word meaning food, which is what you would expect to find in it. Wouldn't want to eat it by that point.
One of my favorite, we've talked about malapropisms before. There's a wonderful subreddit called Bone Apple Tea with lots of malapropisms in it. And one of my favorite recurring ones that you see in there a lot is I like the smell of your colon rather than cologne.
Oh dear. I mean, one dog might say it to another, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps.
Rather more romantic in that.
My dogs certainly seem to not mind.
So we seem to have reached the bottom.
Oh yeah, I think we're there.
Quite literally. Where are you going to take us, Jess?
A couple of entertaining ones. The word bladder means something inflated because toys and other balloons and tools and sausages and things were often made using that part. And then pancreas, interestingly, disturbingly means entirely flesh, describing the apparent consistency of the pancreas.
So like pan as in like panacea,
Yeah.
or that prefix pan that means all entire.
It means raw flesh. And the idea being like raw there.
Pancreas is all raw.
All raw flesh. Here's a fun one. Since we were on the topic of intestines, the word rectum, bizarrely, interestingly, means straight. And
that's weird, right?
Because it's the last little bit, and it is straight, but the rest of that part is very much not. Decidedly unstraight. Which
means it's related to words like erection and right as well.
Very interesting. Let's see. All right. So what bits do we want to talk about next?
Do you want to start at the back or the front?
We could start at the back. Since we're at the rectum, we could talk about the fact that the anus literally just means ring.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
That's relatively fine.
People will perhaps notice that I haven't brought anything to the table at this point because it seems pointless for me to research these things. Jess has already done it.
I have a book about it.
Indeed. Words from Hell.
That's right.
Jess, while we're flogging things, show dear viewer your T-shirt.
Oh, yeah, I should. That's right. Okay, so we have just opened up a Words Unravelled shop with fun etymology-themed merch in it. And one of them I'm wearing right now. It's a T-shirt designed, by my sister. Showing it off. Very nice.
It's so elegant.
Nice. I don't know how well you can hear me. Now I am closer to my mic, but it says astronaut and includes the etymology of the word astronaut, which means literally star sailor. And therefore the illustration by my sister, Melissa Ferris, shows an astronaut tethered to a nautical ship.
Melissa is a very talented lady.
She is. She's a professional artist. Her Instagram is Melissa Ferris Art, if you'd like to check out her work.
If you want to get hold of one of these beautiful T-shirts or one of the other designs that we've got up there, we're going to keep adding designs as amusing things come up during our episodes. Then you can, of course, click on the link, which we will provide in the description to both this audio podcast, but also to the YouTube edition as well.
Indeed. Anyway, back to crotches.
Can't hold off any longer, can we?
Well, this one's so a couple of like surprisingly not offensive words. Crotch itself means a pitchfork. And I guess the idea here is it's like the crook in a pitchfork, your legs being the tines of said pitchfork. And then groin literally means abyss. It is an Old English word meaning abyss.
Yeah.
The Old English word was grinda, which meant like a depression or a hollow. The idea that it's a depression or hollow, say like between the legs, that kind of idea. And then its spelling was probably influenced by loin.
That idea of it being a sort of absence of something is also behind other words for that part of the body, particularly when talking about a woman. A woman.
Oh,
I'm good
yes,
at this
indeed.
bit. I'm so good at talking about these things.
I won't torture you too much longer. Okay, so one of my favorite, I'm going to plug this a little bit because one of my favorite lines in the entirety of Words from Hell is the entry on the word. If we're talking about the lady bits, we're going to start with the more important part, in my opinion, which is the clitoris. And if you open up the book to the entry on this word, it begins, "Congratulations, you found it."
Hey, bravo, bravo. I actually made a similar joke in one of my videos. I did a video about funny place names, and there is indeed a town of clitoris.
And that's because it means a little hill. That makes a lot of sense, most likely at least. And we've also, I think we addressed the fact in one of our food related episodes that the word vanilla is from the Latin word vagina, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it means a little vagina.
Yeah, it traveled, and that's because in Latin, vagina was a euphemism. It meant pod or sheath or something. So we've borrowed as our medical term for that body part this word, which was a euphemism in Latin.
Yeah, it's evoking the idea of somewhere to park your sword, basically, which is pretty grim, and actually rather more grim than the more Anglo-Saxon alternative, which is the C word, as I will call it, which was an innocuous term. Really, there's no great taboo around the C word in medieval times, but there obviously very much is now. But that word in itself essentially means a sort of a clef, I guess.
I have a lot on this word. I think we should save it for our swear words episode, which we will do.
Let's do a swear word episode for sure. I mean, we might have to take a financial hit because I'm not sure that YouTube's going to let.
Yeah, we'll have to probably bleep that one a bit, but it's a fantastic word. 10 out of 10 recommend using liberally. But
by the way, I don't want to get into it too much, but here's an interesting difference in that usage across the Atlantic, I think, is that in the UK, we would never use the C word about a woman, whereas from what I see from American usage of it, it's almost entirely used towards women.
It's meaner spirited in most contexts over here, for sure.
And in Australia, it's just used for absolutely anyone.
Right. There's a particular quote I'm sure people will reference in the comments on this one that you say in Australia, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, but let's move away from it.
Yeah, let's move away from that one. Let's talk about the other equipment we have here. Interestingly, also a word for other things in Latin. The penis was a word for not just the generally male equipment.
A penetrative tool, I suppose.
Right, exactly. But also a word for a tail. It also connects it to the word pencil, which was originally a word for a fine paintbrush, and penicillin, whose cells are paintbrush-like.
Should we be pronouncing it penicillin then?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Let's not.
We can. I'm in. Sounds
More
great.
excuses to giggle at the
very nice, very nice. Interestingly, although it's considered a good bit more vulgar now, the earlier English word for male parts was the iconic cock, of course.
Oh, what, really?
Yeah. One of the first known instances of this word in English is the compound word pillcock, which appears in the 14th century Anglo-Irish book The Kildare Lyrics in a poem that begins, "Elde maketh me geld," or "Old age makes me gelded." And it complains about the impotence of old age. The line essentially in modern English is, "I may no longer make love, my penis pisses on my shoe."
And he calls his penis a pillcock.
Pillcock, that's right.
That's interesting, because pill is an old English word for skin, for peel. It's like a skin cock. So are we calling birds cocks before we're calling other things cocks?
Yes, it was originally a word for a bird. Absolutely. Specifically a male bird, and one who strutted much like a rooster, for example.
So your man's referring to his skin rooster.
Yes.
And that pill that I just mentioned that is related to the word peel is actually from an old word meaning to strip, and to strip someone of their possessions is to pillage them.
Very nice. Good connections there. If you want to talk about like what we might consider a more, polite, scientific, clinical term for either gender, you could go with pudenda or pudendum, which refers to the external genitals of one sex or another. But it literally means shame limb. And Old English also had a word meaning the same thing, scam limb. And apparently this is just common.
Really?
Yeah.
So shame limb goes that far back as well. Oh, Isn't that sad? How we've been feeling bad about our balls all this time.
Because it's the thing you hide, right?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Mhm.
I guess it is.
We talked about testicles in our episode when we discussed, why were we talking about testifying? Because we talked about law and legal terms. But there was a rumor, essentially, just to summarize briefly, that that one testified upon testicles, essentially, and that that when you were making a deal or when you were swearing an oath or something, you would fondle one another's bits. But this is considered utterly groundless, and it probably hasn't the connection, although they are related. The idea is that like the existence of testicles is a testament or something that you can witness that shows you that the like a child, for example, is male.
Again, there's a lot of sort of faux etymology around the word testicles, but nevertheless, we take every opportunity to talk about it. Interestingly, I was talking about body eggs, the kidneys. And in German,
I was going to say that sounds more like body eggs to me.
Indeed, yeah. In German, the equivalent of the word balls, this sort of jokey way of talking about the testicles is Eier, which is your eggs.
Indeed, bollocks or earlier ballocks just meant little balls.
Yeah, and orchid as well. Orchid means balls, doesn't it? Wait, hold on. I just called that up. Hold on. I can't just
penis?
I can't just say that. No, orchid is definitely to do with balls. Hold on.
No, you're right. You're totally right. It means testicle. No,
I think I know my penis from my balls. Thank you very much.
You're right. I'm out of my league here.
Back off. I think I've really gone red this time.
Less offensive and less, I don't know, humorous, I suppose, is the word vulva, getting back to the other kind of bits.
We spend so much longer on these parts than we have all the others.
It's thought to be from the verb volvere, which would relate it to words like revolve and revolution, with the idea that the outside of the genitals serve as wrappers or things that wrap around things or enclose things.
We talked about the legs already and how from now on going to refer to them as my bones, which is going to really confuse people. Knee is one that's worth a mention because it just means sort of joint, right? It has an ancient root meaning joint, but so does the word elbow and the word ankle. In fact, ankle is related to the word angle as well. So all the major joints are actually just called joint.
Yeah, and it's like knee has the same root as words like hexagon and trigonometry and octagon and things, so it's the Greek word for angle that it's related to.
We missed a really good one that's related to what you talked about because it's a nice intersection with mathematics. And that is that the word finger is thought to come from an ancient root meaning 5, because we've got 5 of them. And that would be the same root as the pent in pentagon, which is kind of cool.
Not totally related, but the Greek word for finger, dactyl, which we see in like pterodactyl, finger wing. It's the same root as the word date, which in English was sometimes called a finger fruit.
Oh,
because it looks like, well, I think digit fruit. Really, it's more like fingers and toes and stuff, which is kind of gross and awesome.
Yeah, that is cool. And I think thumb just means swollen, so it's like the swollen
yeah,
finger.
fat finger.
Your fat finger. Yeah.
One more thing on knee. That's one of those words with the KN in front of it, where you used to pronounce the K sound which was a C in Old English, knie.
Yeah, and in German, again, it is Knie now. They also have another word for bones in German, which is Knochen as well, which is an extremely satisfying word.
Your knees are Knochen. Your knees are Knochen.
You have your Knie Knochen. Yeah, indeed. And foot. We should mention foot. Brings us nicely back to where we started with talking about the links between the Indo-European languages, because you can actually comparatively easy, compared with the other ones we've been talking about, link the word foot with the word pedal and all of these Latinate versions of it, the f and the p. That's a very common transference of sound for the consonant there, and the d and t as well. It's the same thing that means that dental and tooth are actually related. You have the d moving to the t and the t moving to the th
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't understand this this reference completely, and I wonder if it could be the same way like you call a person a body, but apparently a foot could also be a word for like a person in Middle English. So you'd have words like non-foot was another word for nobody.
A bit like we can refer to people as hands when we're on a boat.
On that instep, let's take a walk outside this podcast.
Oh, that is laboured, Jess. Oh. Okay, yeah. We have gone from head to... Oh, man, I didn't even look up toe. That's really embarrassing. Hold on. Give me a second. Big book. Let's look up toe. You know, some languages manage without the word toe. You know, they have the same word for the digits on your feet as on your finger. So we should count ourselves lucky for even having the word toe. Okay, so it's thought to be related to other words meaning to point or to show, which I think is kind of interesting. One doesn't normally point with one's toes, although actually, yes, one does, particularly if one is a ballet dancer and is on points.
It is related, I'm seeing, to words like indicate and things like that. So it does point a bit.
I like that, which actually is kind of similar to dactyle, isn't it? When you think about it as well, meaning fingers. So toes probably related to the word finger somehow. Okay, so that is head to toe. We've done it.
Well, that was a comprehensive view of the body. I'm now very much aware of the existence of my bones, which I hate, but I'm going to leave you with that one too.
I've actually never seen your bones, Jess. I've only ever seen you from the waist up here on Words Unravelled. Jess and I have never met in person, by the way. We should point this out. We are a modern marvel in that respect.
Indeed.
Strike up this friendship remotely. Thanks, Jess. Thanks for watching or listening, and do check out those bits and bobs that we're putting in our new shop.
Yes, visit our shop, check out the link, and we hope this episode satisfied you, body and mind.